You're not going to believe what just dropped in Ottawa. The Auditor General has just exposed a $93 million procurement scandal, and it is everything wrong with the Liberals in one grotesque taxpayer-funded package.
What we found here is that public servants were not applying procurement rules that at times are very clear. This echoed findings that I had in my previous audit on ArriveCan, as well as a previous audit on professional services that focused in on McKinsey & Company. I said it back then, and I'll repeat it now. I have no reason to believe that this is unique to two vendors. And that's why I believe the government needs to take a step back and look at why this behavior is happening. And is it that there are just too many rules that just keep getting added on audit after audit so that folks don't understand all of the rules? Or are people trying to go around them to make the process faster? Either way, the rules are meant to support transparency and accountability, and I would expect that those basic elements are followed by public servants.
It's crony contracting, zero oversight, fake competition, and the cherry on top, the chef's kiss. The CBC reported on it like it was someone else's scandal. Spoiler alert, it was a CBC scandal too.
Mr. Firth said today that he was completely unaware of connections between Vaughan Brennan and senior Liberal staffer Jeremy Broadhurst. Completely unaware of connections to senior Liberals. But Mr. Firth received a text on February 1st, 2021 that was subsequently reported in the Globe and Mail that specifically described the involvement of the Deputy Prime Minister's office where Broadhurst was Chief of Staff. Does Mr. Firth want to correct his earlier response?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, I have no knowledge. I cannot remember sending that text message.
Let's talk about GC Strategies, owned by Christian Firth and Darren Anthony, a firm you've probably heard of if you've been following the ArriveCan fiasco. That's the infamous pandemic surveillance app that wrongfully sent 10,000 people to quarantine under threats of $5,000 in fines.
The report identifies that there were 10,000 Canadians falsely, inappropriately sent into quarantine by one out of the 177 versions of the app. What is the total number of people who were sent into quarantine by this app who shouldn't have been? Thank you.
10,200 were given a false notification that they should have been quarantined when they weren't actually needed to be quarantined.
The one that cost taxpayers over $60 million for something that was replicated for a fraction of that over a weekend by tech bros to prove a point. Yeah, GC Strategies helped rake in that cash. But as it turns out, ArriveCan was just the beginning of the GC Strategies scandal.
The procurement watchdog found numerous examples where GC Strategies, quote, had simply copied and pasted, end quote, information to prove the people GC Strategies found to do work on ArriveCan actually did it. Question: has the government asked GC Strategies to repay the money paid to GC Strategies for ArriveCan?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, the numbers that were provided by the Ombudsman from Public Works we found were inaccurate when we did our assessments. And secondly, we have not been asked to pay any money back.
According to the Auditor General's new report, this two-man IT firm, yes, literally two guys, no office, no staff, no infrastructure, secured 106 federal contracts worth up to $92.7 million from 2015 to 2024. How much of your money has already been handed over to these two? $64.5 million. Let me break it down. The AG looked at 31 federal organizations, and here's what she found. In 82% of sole-sourced or single-bid contracts, departments didn't even check to see if the prices were remotely fair. They just paid whatever GC Strategies was asking. In 21% of those contracts, there was no evidence that subcontractors had the required security clearances despite working on sensitive government systems. Remember this one when we get to the defense contracts. And the government pulled a classic bureaucratic trick. It split the contracts for the same project into low-value chunks, under $25,000, to dodge procurement rules. That happened at least 87 times. This wasn't some back office clerical error. It was a systemic failure of the rules, either ignored or deliberately bypassed. Let's look at some of the worst offenders. Canada Border Services Agency paid GC Strategies $49.9 million. The Treasury Board Secretariat paid them $10 million. Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, also nearly $10 million. And here's the one I told you to remember. National Defense paid this two-man firm $3.6 million. And remember, their subcontractors frequently didn't have the proper security clearance to be working on the files that they were working on. And here's the one that I found most interesting when I looked at the coverage from the other news media on the AG's report. Even the CBC got in on it, cutting a check for $12,000 to GC Strategies. The CBC spent months reporting on the GC Strategies and ArriveCan scandals. They wrote headlines. They covered parliamentary hearings. They wagged their taxpayer-funded finger at government mismanagement. And they never disclosed, not once, that they themselves were a client of GC Strategies. That $12,000 contract, never mentioned. It only came out now thanks to the Auditor General's report. That's not journalism. That's hiding a conflict of interest. Imagine Rebel News doing a report on a company that we hired, but never telling you about it. We'd be tarred and feathered, but the CBC, they get a pass. And about $1.5 billion a year to keep pretending like they're impartial. And honestly, the CBC's biggest conflict of interest is the most obvious one. You can't take government money and then report on the government. Let's sum it up. A tiny firm got $93 million in contracts. Federal departments ignored rules more than 8 times out of 10. Security standards were just thrown out the window. There were no fraud detection systems, no digital procurement platform, even after billions in spending. And the state broadcaster was part of the mess and stayed silent on it.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Firth just admitted that the RCMP raided his house relative to Bottler AI. When Mr. Firth introduced Bottler AI to his consultant colleague, Mr. Von Brennan, he had them email Mr. Jeremy Broadhurst, the former Chief of Staff for the Minister of Finance and the current Liberal campaign chair. Did Mr. Brennan regularly set up Mr. Firth's contacts with elected officials, ministers, and their chiefs of staff?
Mr. Firth. Mr. Speaker, that's news to me. I've never engaged Vaughan Brennan to get any meetings with senior government officials.
This is what government accountability looks like under Prime Minister Mark Carney. Unchecked spending, zero transparency, and media protection from the state-run press. And those involved still sitting in his cabinet or working in his bureaucracy. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Many of these scandals are revealed through access to information filings. Now, we don't get any money to do this work like the CBC does. We rely on the support of our viewers at home. We want to hold the government to account for the things it says and does behind closed doors. To help me file those dozens of access filings that we file every single week here at Rebel News, please consider making a donation at rebelinvestigates.com.